Today's video is brought to you by the EckhartsLadder Teespring store, which not only has classic EckhartsLadder designs, but also several new shirts added just today. I'll link to that down in the description. Decades of tight-lipped UNSC captains, and of course the Cole Protocol, protected Earth, humanity's birthplace and the most important UNSC planet, from the Covenant. However, that would all change in 2552. The Prophet of Regret had found a Forerunner luminary on the planet Meridian. The luminary pointed to a single portal to the Ark on a planet known as Erde Tyrene. Taking a small fleet, he traveled to this planet and stumbled upon humanity's homeworld. Despite facing an overwhelming UNSC defense, the prospect of finding the portal was too tempting for Regret, and one of his ships, the Solemn Penance, was able to bypass Earth's defenses and make its way to Mombasa, a major city in Kenya, which at the time was a member nation within the East African Protectorate. As a note, many African nations would see significant action during the Covenant invasion, but we'll get to that later. Regret attacked New and Old Mombasa before fleeing to Delta Halo. His escape flattened much of the city and caused New Mombasa's space elevator to crash to the planet's surface. Hours later, a second Covenant fleet, led by the Prophet of Truth and his brutes, arrived and pushed through the UNSC defensive array, moving again to Africa, where he began to uncover the portal to the Ark. We can see from this map that the excavation was limited mostly to Kenya, but we know specifically that other forces moved through Africa in search of other artifacts. The UNSC continued to mount a defense in space, but planetside, the Covenant was largely able to move throughout the planet without resistance. Presumably, fighting occurred, at least to some degree, across the entire planet. However, we know specifically that a Chiefless Blue Team was deployed non-stop, and we actually learn a lot about Covenant deployments because of their adventures. They fought the Covenant at least in Antarctica, off the coast of Mexico, and in Havana, Cuba. Havana specifically had been totally taken over by Covenant forces, so we see the scope of the alien invasion. Unsurprisingly, this breadth, but also specificity of the invasion was driven by the hunt for Forerunner artifacts. As this was happening, the Covenant deployed to several locations within the Pacific Ocean. We see also in Halo Uprising that the Covenant landed a large force in Cleveland, Ohio. I know what you're thinking, Cleveland seems like an odd target, and it is. I recommend you read Halo Uprising, but in short, their attack was driven by a fake Forerunner artifact invented by Colonel Ackerson. Sydney, Australia, which houses the UNSC's main headquarters, was also prioritized by the Covenant, attacked early on, and nearly totally destroyed. The rest of the country was similarly bombarded, leading to the events of the Mad Max franchise. In mid-November, Master Chief arrived to defend the planet, and was identified by a Marine fighting the Covenant in Afghanistan, and we know the entire region, including also Pakistan, was under attack. John landed in Covenant-controlled Tanzania near Kilimanjaro. Back near the ruins of Mombasa, the Covenant also finally uncovered the portal, and much of Regret's fleet left the planet. However, almost immediately afterwards, Africa dealt with a flood infestation, resulting in the glassing of half the continent. Thankfully, the flood did not send secondary forces. Still, the fighting continued. In North America, the Covenant captured and fortified Arizona. With most of the invaders leaving to go to the Ark, the majority of the remaining forces moved to the base, which held successfully against UNSC counterattack for months. And that's everywhere where we know fighting directly occurred. Interestingly, however, in Halo 3, we see a map with dots, which seems to show that the Covenant has attacked, if I were to guess, eastern USA, perhaps Washington, LA, Chile, Morocco, Algeria, India, France, Italy, and Russia. But again, those are just my guesses, it's hard to tell. But thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you guys want to see next. Before I leave, however, I will answer a question of the day. Papa Lawson asks, which Imperial Warlord, Kane, Zinj, Jack, Dala, Heathra, and many others I can't recall, performed the best, or was the most Imperial after the Empire's fall? That's a good question. I've had lots of them recently about Imperial Warlords for some reason. It's cool that you guys are interested in that era because really, it's my favorite. And in fact, I've done a whole video on Imperial Warlords, and I'll try to remember to link that, but in my opinion, you have to either choose Thrawn or Zinj. Zinj was the most successful pure warlord in that he marshaled space, and he was a former Grand Moff of the Quelli Oversector, so he had significant resources, probably more so than any post-Imperial faction, maybe with the exception of the ruling council, but he had significant space and significant ships. He was able to hold out for a long time against the New Republic, and he was certainly the second most powerful faction in the galaxy, during his reign at least, or he represented that faction. Thrawn was sort of a warlord, and together with other sub-warlords, I guess, like Kane and Delvardis, also had a large portion of space, but he was less a warlord who I think more or less tries to fight for themselves and their little sub-empire, and more of a force trying to take down the New Republic and re-establish the Empire, I guess. Palpatine, who I wouldn't call a warlord, however, did come back and basically took down the New Republic overnight, but I think he's sufficiently different to not really be included in this list. Anyway, great question. Thanks to everyone who's been asking them. Make sure, if you want to increase the likelihood of me seeing your post, include the hashtag AskEck. Until next time, guys, may the Force be with you.